Welcome everyone to episode 12 of At the Movies. As we just said, it's the Coen Brothers. It's our second director of season two, and today we are talking their directorial debut, 1984 film that I have so much trivia to talk about. Um, Blood Simple. Usually I ask you about movies first, but I think I will just go ahead and say that I watched this for the first time a couple months ago, like only a few months ago, really, and I loved it. And watching it again today, I also loved it, but it took a little time to get into it. It's definitely a slow-paced movie, even for an hour and a half. And what I will say is that I think that this is a perfect movie to watch in the summer with a few beers, summer night. That kind of movie. I think maybe watching it on Easter Sunday on like a spring morning when it is like kind of cold out is like maybe not the vibes you want. It's a very hot movie. There's like lots of people sweating in Texas, and it almost exclusively takes place at night.
I watched the extended director's cut of the film. Uh, Unknowing to
I
me,
am I'm shocked. You're
and
going to be like the expert on this.
I don't know. I don't know what's the difference. I don't know what's the difference of the film. I don't know. I can bring nothing extra. I remember talking to you. I was like, man, is this what's up with this guy in the suit at the beginning? And you're like the narrator, and I was like, no, there's a literal guy in the suit telling me about the Coen Brothers history. And you're like,
Right.
oh,
So
we're
yeah,
like, oh, this is we are not on the same page. And I was like, all right,
much
whatever.
like the much like the characters in the film, we had our own misunderstanding
Yep,
where you were like, "There's a guy talking," and I was like, "Yeah, the narrator," and you're like, "No,
I
there's a
see
man
him.
in a suit
I
talking.
see him talking. No, I
He's real.
yeah, I see him. I see him. It's
He's
a
real,
ghost.
and he's in my house."
It's a ghost to you. It's a real man to me.
Do some background info real quick, and then we'll talk about the movie. I want to get your impression and stuff. I think the reason that this movie is it clicked with me so much is that it's their first feature film. They had zero filmmaking experience before this. They actually got the movie invested, like they got people to invest in it through making a trailer, which is something that you and I have talked about before.
Mhm.
And I love that. So that made me, feel like, oh man, like kind of connect with it. Um, it is a deceivingly simple movie. Like it kind of is like, here's what you can do with five characters. It's definitely their calling card in terms of like, there's no big set pieces. It's not this like crazy convoluted plot or anything like that. It is literally the story, the age old story of a boss man's wife, boss man's wife's lover, who also happens to be his employee, and the private eye.
I even messaged you and I was like, I'm completely lost. And you were like, how are you lost with this film? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just really lost, I think. And you're like, simply put, boss man's wife, boss man wife sleeps. And I was like, oh, okay, no, I'm good. I just thought there was so much more to it that I was
Nope.
missing like key plot points. And I was like, wait, is it this simple? Like, oh my God. I was like, it can't be. So I'm like over analyzing. And
Simple.
I was like, what did I miss? What did I miss? And you're like, you didn't miss anything. This is it. And I was like,
It
all right, cool. I'm here.
Yeah, it just moves at a snail's pace. But what I will say too is that right when you messaged me that, because you were about 15 minutes behind me, right after the point where Visser shows Marty the photos of the photoshopped photos of their dead bodies, the couple's dead bodies, is when things kind of do get
Yeah.
not confusing, but things start, it's like a mix up, because and that's what I love about this movie absolutely, is it's like not about anything the characters say to each other, it's all about the things they don't say.
Yep.
We usually don't cover the plot, but I think I can do it very quickly. Just so, and I know that people watched it, but just to get all of our strings straightened. And yeah, hit the timer for me
And go.
and go. Okay, employee sleeps with the boss's wife. Boss finds out. Boss hires a PI to investigate. PI confirms that the employee slept with the wife. Boss gets mad. Um, Boss hires PI to then be a hitman to kill both of them. PI lies to the boss, shows him Photoshop dead bodies, and then shoots the boss man to steal the money from the safe in the bar. Then employee discovers boss's dead body, also discovers that, okay, here's where I've hit a stumbling block. The PI shot the boss with the wife's gun, and the employee discovers his boss's dead body, along with the woman's gun, and assumes that she did it. And he tries to cover it up for her because he thinks, "Oh, she like killed her husband for me." So he tries to cover it up for her, and then she finds out that like something is weird because Marty's not around. My husband's not around. I haven't seen him in a while. Hasn't talked to anybody. And Ray's talking like a crazy person because he said he cleaned up my mess and all this crazy stuff. I think Ray killed my husband. And so you got this couple that are kind of like not on the run, but they're both kind of like, okay, first of all, what happened to Marty? Second of all, I think you did something to him. And they never have fully the
Mhm.
conversation, absolving each other from it happening. And meanwhile, you've got this PI that finds out his photos went missing. Um, and so now he is after the couple, to get his photos back.
It would have just been easier for the PI at the beginning to just kill him instead of doctoring the photos, though. I mean, like, this was a lot. This was a lot
That
that
was,
happened
yeah,
there. Like, if
that's
he would have just killed him at the beginning of this film, man, this would have chopped it up, dude. Good. Science, he'll deliver. This man's
yep.
living good. But now he has to go and kill them. He goes out, he gets a sniper rifle. He's on the other building, snipes down Ray. Boom. And then the craziest part of this movie, and now I know that like you started the plot, now I'm finishing it. I don't know how it
Yeah.
happened, but
No,
here we
no,
are.
no, good.
So Abby's like running around. She's like, oh my God, she sees Ray get shot. Guy comes in, Visser comes in. And the craziest thing I've seen is she escapes through the bathroom window, goes across to the other apartment. It's the only way that I can explain this. He he's like in the bathroom looking for her, and Visser is, goes out the window, sticks his hand for some reason out the window, pulls up the window, sticks his hand in to like feel, and Abby's just like, nope, knife right down into his hand and closes the window so it's like blocking the knife in his hand. And then he goes wild, wild west, starts shooting all of his bullets through this, what can only be explained as tissue paper thin walls.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, and first I gotta stop you there, Jimbo, because you just said a key word, my friend. Wild Wild West is a film directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, who this is the first movie he did cinematography for.
Hmm.
Crazy. The man who went to go on to direct Men in Black and Wild Wild West. He also started on this film doing cinematography for this, which I think is so cool to see so many like famous people now getting their humble beginnings, in
Yeah.
1984, and this movie that was shot for 1.5 million dollars made $4 million, and it took a year of, well, no, it didn't take a year of shooting, but it took a year of raising the money, and then it was shot in 8 weeks on location in Texas, and then it took a year to produce. Joel and Ethan Cohen share their duties. So they, even though Joel Cohen is the one credited for directing, and Ethan Cohen is credited as a producer, they both directed the film together. They both edited the film together, and they both produced the film together. So worth keeping in mind, and I believe that has been the case up until just recently. I think one of them is doing a film by themselves.
Wow.
So interesting. But I just think that you see a lot of the things that would go on to appear in their later movies. It's like it's like a murder mystery or like a crime film, which I think they dabble in a lot of. It is based on like a small ensemble cast of character actors. Everyone here has a type. I feel like, and I want to pull up the cast here so that I don't, because I'm going to compare them to people, but I don't want to do them a disservice. The man who plays Marty, no memento, por favor. Simple. The man who plays Marty, Dan Hedaya, he gives me Tommy Lee Jones vibes in
Yeah.
this role,
Mhm.
and who is somebody who they would go on to work with. And similarly, and this is not to say that their performances aren't as good as those people either, because the performances are great. Um, Similarly, Emmett Walsh, who plays Visser, the PI and Hitman, gives me John Goodman vibes. And I think that I could picture John Goodman in that role as well, who's somebody that they would go on to work with a lot.
Yeah.
He is like he is like this funny guy, like not really funny. I mean, like people get annoyed with him, but in the movie, it's comic relief. shoots Marty. I laughed out loud. Like I didn't think this movie was that funny the first time I watched it, and I still wouldn't say it's super funny, but he shoots Marty and the shot doesn't cut at all. And he's just holding the gun, and then his other hand comes into frame with his hat, and he like he fans the sweat from his brow in the same shot, which I thought was really funny.
I think it was a really well done film. Surprised to hear that it was 1.5 million for a budget, and they were able to raise that. When you first said that they had zero film making experience when they came into this film, I thought about that and then saw the budget, and I was amazed that they were able to raise that much money and then go on to produce something that's so technically done. These shots and the cinematography and the way that it was edited, I think was probably one of the better films I've seen, even though for being like a debut film.
You know what it reminded me of, not to interrupt you, is some of the first Scorsese films we
It
watched. There
did.
were some
No, that's what,
shots
yeah.
some shots that reminded me of it. In particular, there's a shot that runs down the bar, and there's a
Mhm.
guy who has his head on the bar, and the camera like moves up to like go over him and then comes back down. And then the second shot that I picked up that I loved was a shot on Marty's body from above the ceiling fan. So the ceiling fan keeps coming in the way of the shot, and like the third time the blade comes around, it uses that to transition to black to the next scene, which I
I
thought was really really
I think
cool.
that my favorite scenes were when, Marty takes Abby from the house and starts dragging her outside, and they do this, like, creepy thriller run-up camera shot that's, like, sped up.
Yes. Can I interrupt you again, my
Oh,
friend?
yeah, sure.
I'm so sorry. I'm just so excited about all this stuff that I've read and stuff that I know. So that reminded me of I'm a horror movie guy, and that reminded me of Evil Dead because in Evil Dead, Sam Raimi, that's his thing. He does a POV of like the evil spirit or whatever it is, and the camera's low to the ground and it runs up on whoever it's going to attack. Ethan Cohen and Joel Cohen lived in a house with Sam Raimi, and they were like a filmmaking house in LA. Like before they got big, that's what they did. They all lived in this house together and like worked on scripts and writing together. Um, and Bruce Campbell, who's the star of Evil Dead, he was in the trailer, the original trailer for Blood Simple that raised the money to make the movie. And he's not in the actual film, but
Wow,
he played the lead in the trailer. So
that's outstanding.
there's just so many like cool little connections, I think, to people and film around the time that you can kind of trace back. It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon,
I think
except
it's cool because
Kevin
film has
Bacon
kinda
is
lost
nowhere
that,
to
I
be found.
feel like, throughout time now that's, like, big stuff, so in the that's why I like what we're doing is 10 to 15 years from now, it's nice to see, like, what's spawned off from what we've done and who's worked with who and who's done
Right.
this and starting to make it so it's not just a big like, film isn't just big budget, it's just not big LA
Yeah.
or New York or whatever it is, it's just to prove that it can be done, so there's one thing that I am excited about, and, the other scene, which I'm hoping when I say these scenes is what you saw too, because, like, at any point, I'd be like, "Oh, this was the director's cut." Abby's having a dream, and she's laying in bed, and Marty comes to her in the dream and just pukes an ungodly amount of blood all over the floor, and I was amazed by that whole entire dream sequence and how they handled that. Just
I think
is
the amount of blood may have been a director's cut thing because I think in my version he just kind of goes like "Bleh, bleh," and like kind of gags up some blood, and it does hit the floor. Like it does definitely hit the floor, but it's not like
dude,
a
there was like 8 gallons of blood
yeah.
coming out of
This was
this.
I don't think that that was in this, but that sounds sick as hell.
He
That
was like
sounds
he was
very
like,
cool.
"Bleh, bleh," and it was like Cronenberg just like came in and was like, it was like blood everywhere. I was like, whoa.
Movie does have some horror movie vibes to it, even though it has no. And I read that that was kind of an inspiration for them. So it's got kind of the crime movie, pulp fiction, neo noir thing going on. But the thing that I noticed, aside from that shot, and like her stabbing his hand at the end, is pretty gruesome. Um, the score of this movie
Yep.
does the thing that horror movie scores do, where it has this like returning motif
Mhm.
that sticks in your brain. It's just a piano part that's like "Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo," like, it
Mhm.
just kinda repeats in a minor key throughout key scenes in the movie, and it does a really good job of being simple and sticking with your brain, I think, you know?
It's funny as much as we've talked about this film, and I don't know, maybe in your trivia mind here, you can answer, this question, but so how simple it was, is that kind of the reason why they came up with Blood Simple? Was that the name? Was that because it was like a
So
simple story? It was a simple.
yeah, so well, according to the Wikipedia page, the film's title derives from the Dashiell Hammett novel Red Harvest, in which the term "blood simple" describes the fearful mindset of people after a prolonged immersion in violent situations.
Oh, which
So
makes
it's like
perfect sense for the story.
right, you've got these really it's like it's two primary characters that are paranoid, and then kind of two characters on the outside that are also kind of growing paranoid. Um, they're just constantly like keeping an eye out for what's behind their back, you know? I mean, even before they kill Marty, the couple spends their and I'm blanking on her name. It's Ray and
Abby.
Ray and Abby. They spend after Marty breaks into her home the one day and tries to like physically remove her from Ray's home, they spend the film wondering if they heard him outside, if he's going to be like breaking back into the house and so it is this like thing of paranoia. Movie moves so slow, but when it's over, I think you are left with like some really iconic shots and scenes. Like when I think about this movie, I think about that overhead shot of Marty's body, dead body, just sitting there, leg up on the desk. I think about Ray dragging a shovel across the road, just this road in the middle of Texas,
Yep.
and like having to run through that field because he thought he saw Marty's body move, and then he comes back and Marty's still alive. The decision to bury Marty alive is like crazy because you're like, at first, you're like, is he going to take mercy on him? Like, because he doesn't kill him with the shovel?
I thought he was gonna throw him in front of that truck.
That
I was like,
could,
"Whoa."
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you're supposed to maybe think like, what's going to happen here? Like, there's a couple things there are a couple like red herrings or like misdirects in here. So like when Abby gets her apartment, there's a guy in there, Estevez, and the lady who's selling the apartment is like, she's like, "Is this? Are you sure this place is vacant?" And the lady selling the apartment is like, "Oh yeah, don't worry about it. That's like my brother-in-law Estevez. Like I told him to get out." Then later, when Visser comes to her house and she comes to the apartment, actually it's Ray. When Ray comes to the apartment, I thought it was going to be that guy because I was like, why else would they show him?
Mhm,
Why else have that part? You know, I thought it was going to be kind of like a thing where it's like, oh, it's just this crazy guy or whatever. Um, but yeah, I don't. And then the ending scene for sure is I think very iconic. Visser laying on the bathroom and like just a fantastic closing line to the movie when she says, "I'm not afraid of you, Ray," because this whole time she thinks it's or not Ray. "I'm not afraid of you, Marty," because this whole time she thinks it's Marty.
mhm,
And then that dude, Emmett Walsh's character, Visser, just laughs at her, and she's like, "What? Like, who is this? I don't even know who this person is."
mhm.
He's like gurgling blood, and then he's like, it's Southern accent, gravy filled Southern accent. He's like, "Ma'am, I'll see you. If I see him, I'll tell him the message or whatever." Like, it's great. It's so good.
I think as we went through like Scorsese's film in season 1, I could start to piece together like him and like improving and how his earlier films affected his later ones when the budget got bigger. This film seemed like a test run for No Country for Old Men. And this and the way that it was set up and the way it was that crime thriller, it was set in that like Texas, that like just the way that you described it, that hot just environment and just the way the dialogue was driven and the way it was written, it seems a perfect setup for eventually for the one of my favorite movies of all time, No Country for Old Men. And there was a lot of takes from Blood Simple, and you can see that now. Once we get to that film later on in season 2, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but I think that was interesting to see. I was able to
I'm
go
so
back in
happy.
time.
Yeah, I'm so happy you mentioned that because I think that's going to be the last film we watch.
It
So it'll be
is.
a perfect
Mm,
time to revisit and compare. Something I thought of too, like we're not covering Fargo this season, but it made me think of that too, where I was like, how good they are at setting characters in a location that has something distinct about it. So in Fargo, it's like the snow and the accents. Hey there, hey Margie, how you doing? You know, that kind of thing. Oh, hey there, Marge, how you doing? In this one, it is like I said, you can see the sweat on like everyone's brow. It is clearly Texas. It is this like there's roadkill in the first shot. Like it is like this road, this back road, you know, Texas place, and it feels like the as cliche as it is to say, it feels like the setting is kind of its own character. One more thing to mention, like and this movie is so full of, and I don't mean to just like gush about it because I love it and I do want to get your actual like opinion on it too because I didn't know it would be lukewarm or what kind of mood you'd be in to watch it because I remember it being as slow as it was. But last fact would be that this is also Frances McDormand's first time on screen, first role. Um, she's Joel Cohen's wife, and she'd go on to be in a lot of films. Amazing actress, as is not just attached to the Coen brothers in any like way, but she notably is the lead in Fargo and Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Um, she's in a lot of great stuff. Super talented. So to see her first performance was I just this movie kind of inspires me because it makes me feel like I doesn't make makes me feel like I was there, which is a very weird thing to say, but it makes me feel like they were where we are. Like it makes me think about sitting in my house writing, having no real background in film, and pulling together your friends that are also interested in this thing you want to do and just giving it your all, you know,
Mhm.
and getting something off the ground. It really is kind of inspiring. I want to hear your thoughts and how this one rolled over in your head and how like the twists and turns worked for you or didn't work for you.
Yeah, so after I realized that I wasn't, like, missing key plot points, the film sat better, with me because for some reason, I just thought I was missing things, but it was a very simple story, and I think that's needed for a first film. Like, don't tackle more than you can chew. Like, a simple story goes a long way, especially when you're starting out. Like, don't do something that's complicated or that has, like, a lot of, like, intricate dialogue and, like, nuances. So, for a first film, I think this film is excellently done. And I love the Coen brothers to a point because it's interesting to see them start, and it's a similar path that we're taking a little bit newer because it's 30 years,
Right.
40 years later almost when we're starting and doing stuff. It's crazy. 1980 wasn't 20 years ago anymore, everybody, just in case you were wondering. But so it's nice to see this kind of film come up from them as their first film. The technically the score, the shots, the transitions, the editing, uh, perfect in my opinion. I loved it, absolutely love it. As me, I'm more of the technical guy when it comes to these films. I like seeing the transitions or how they handle dialogue scenes, or especially when you talk about these earlier films, you know, it's like one camera. They don't have multiple cameras. It's one, like that's what a lot of people don't realize. It's not like it's two cameras set on two people and they're just having a good time. It's one camera and then piecing that together so it doesn't look jarring when you're viewing it takes a lot of skill, and the music helped progress the story along. So did the filming, and so did the editing. I'm very happy with this film. A little slow, but
Definitely.
I think everybody's first film is a little slow because you are worried that you didn't do enough, so you put in more than you probably needed to. And I was going to say the same when ours comes out. It'll be probably like our first feature. It'll be a little slow, I'm sure.
I think there is like you said, like the one camera thing, for example, that would be viewed by some filmmakers as a limitation or some people who analyze film. But for me, it's the kind of thing that like there's almost a low budget charm to the movie where it's like it makes it cohesive. Like it works for their vision for this
Mhm.
movie. It feels like part of the package that they're using a single camera, you know? And I think that the film does it is slow, but I think that it picks up after the inciting incident of Abby killing Marty. And I guess I don't know why anyone would listen to this if you haven't seen the movie because we just roll out the plot for you, which we usually don't do on this show. But I think it was necessary to kind of analyze some aspects of the
Mhm.
movie,
It was needed.
and I do think too, like watching. movie kind of knowing what's going to happen and having this background information can be valuable. I think
100%.
you can pull things that you might not pull on first watch. I also, just out of curiosity, I looked up Joel Cohen's age when this came out to see how comparable it was to us, kind of starting our journey. 28 years old, right in between you and me. 28 years old.
Mhm.
So it
How old was
is
Ethan?
it really does feel like a parallel. Ethan was 25. I love this movie. I don't think it's like perfect or anything, but I think it fits in its pocket in the sense it's like it's in a very specific pocket where it has a low budget charm to it, and watching it you can see the through lines that the directors start that carry throughout their career. Um and overall, just for a first film with all the limitations they had, I think the performances are good. I think the writing's good, the editing. Um really enjoyed this one. I think it was a good way to kick off their kind of analyzing some of their movies, and I'm super excited to
Yeah.
come back to it. It's very funny because we couldn't have picked two different directors this season
No, not at
to
all.
compare. Like, one is very loud with their message or not message or whatever you want to call it, and one is just like very understated
Yep.
in it. But that's kind of the fun of it. I'm
Yeah.
excited to see what kind of parallels we can draw between the two at the end of the season, you
The
know?
end of the day, that's the fun part is analyzing 2 different directors and 2 directors at different times or, growing up at the same time, kinda like we did Scorsese and Cronenberg, so
I'm glad you liked the movie, man. I feel like I dominated this episode a little bit. I feel like I was a little Aaron heavy, and I apologize.
it's
I was
fine
just
with me.
very
Carry,
very
bud.
excited about
Carry.
it.
Carry, it's your
Yeah.
director, man. I love it. We do have some, let's talk a little shop real quick. We do have some exciting news coming up. As you know, we talked about fan favorite Fridays. Aaron and I are currently working on figuring out the logistics of that. And there should be an event popping up on our Facebook when we decide when we're going to do it. So make sure you're following Lomo Media on Facebook so that way you can be a part of the event as well. There's no definite time, but just make sure that you're following. It will be coming soon. And we're going to have a guest joining us on a future episode, definitely in season 2. There'll be more to come on that as well. I don't want to spoil it for you now because we're currently working on getting a guest on, which I'm very excited about. So that's all I
Awesome.
have.
And I would love to plug as well that we've been working on getting the excuse me, getting the audio versions up on distribution service streaming platforms, I should say. So by the time you're hearing this, most likely At the Movies will be available wherever you stream your podcast. Right now, think it's available pretty much everywhere but Apple Podcasts, and it may have updated in the past
Yeah.
day, so it may even be there now. Shooting the Bit is there as well. That is our sister show that we do, where we just kind of catch up and literally shoot the bit, shoot the shit, kind of talk about our what's been going on for us, and try to come up with some ideas for our sketches and stuff. You know, so if that sounds like something you're interested in, definitely check that out. Again, there's Shooting the Bit and obviously At the Movies with Lo and Mo on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen. So give us a follow, give us a share if you're enjoying the show. It's a free way to support us. Um, and we've got a lot of great stuff on the Patreon too. If you ever feel like you ever got a couple extra bucks to throw old Low and Mo, you
Just
can watch the movies with
$5
us.
goes a long way. We would
You can watch
appreciate
the
it.
movies with us in real time in our Discord. We'll chat with you as we're watching them. We can sync up watching, and you'll kind of get a glimpse into what we're thinking before the episode comes
Mhm.
out. So otherwise, yeah, good stuff on the way. Had a great time. Still love doing the show. Super excited for next week where we've got Total Recall, Paul Verhoeven.
The Governator
Again,
himself, Arnold
a
Schwarzenegger.
film that could not be further from this one.
Yep.
Literally takes place on Mars, where this one takes place in Texas, but it is going to
Some
be a
may say it's the
blast. So
same, Mars and Texas. Could be similar. We don't
it's
know.
very true. It's very true. It is weird that there's a scene. I did forget about the scene in Total Recall where Arnold Schwarzenegger carries a shovel outside of his Martian rover and carries an Omnicorp exec
Yep.
alive in the Martian desert.
Ladies
You
and
know,
gentlemen, we're in for a wild ride, so make sure that you're watching Total Recall, or if not, these are completely fun to listen to, even if you have no interest in watching the movie. Get our take on it anyways. Who cares?